What created Batman? Was it the murder of the Waynes in Crime Alley that fateful night? What drives Superman? Is it the ideals taught to him by the Kent family? What rose Wonder Woman? Was it the love and care of Themyscira? DC recently decided to answer these questions in their new Absolute Universe, a world where Darkseid ensured all these elements would be removed, and yet the heroes still arose. Batman isn't rich, but he cares for his city. He became one of the people within it. He trains and studies, and in spite of his situation, still becomes Batman. Superman is raised on a corrupt and broken planet that ensures its own downfall, and so, when he arrives on Earth, now an adult, he refuses to let what he once witnessed happen again. And Wonder Woman is raised on the Isle of Hell, her people's name robbed from her, but despite this, she fights for her own freedom and the truth, standing as the last Amazonian. And so I ask you now, what makes Dick Grayson Nightwing? This idea has been floating around in my head for a few weeks now. After Troy Boyo did his video on Absolute Green Arrow, all I could think about was Absolute Dick Grayson, and at the time, Absolute Robin. Then, when Danboy Wonder did his Absolute Ben 10 video, followed by Dr. Wardy's Absolute Kevin 11, and Axon Cinema's Absolute Spider-Man and Absolute Captain America, I thought, damn, I better get this done soon, because people are rolling out pictures and ideas. So firstly, let's go over the seemingly fan-made rules of the Absolute Pitch Ideas videos. Firstly, we've got to change a core element of the character's origins, like Batman going from rich to working class. Then, come up with a possible suit or power shift up for this universe, like how Superman's suit seems to feed him sun energy, or Wonder Woman's now got spells, right? And finally, an idea for their initial storyline. We're talking the first 5-issue multi-part story, right? Like how Absolute Batman is taking on Black Mask's gang. That sort of idea. So, the Absolute Nightwing comic book would open up on Then. A circus is in Gotham. People are flooding in to see it. The posters all read, "Welcome, the return of the Flying Graysons." A teenage boy awkwardly stands in a dressing room, holding a jumpsuit in his arms. It's bright blue. A man walks in and asks why he isn't in his costume. He says some of the guys from school were going out, and he wanted to join them. "I know it's late, but..." the man interrupts. "The Graysons always fly together, son." The boy turns and faces him, pleased just this once. The man steps out the room, and as he does, he says, "Remember, son, you never need to feel ashamed for who you are. You're a Grayson. You can fly." The boy stares back at the suit. Cut to an older version of him, looking at it once more. In a different room, his father's words still ringing. Now. A mugging is happening in an alley. A crook's stealing some lady's purse. And as he pushes her away and snatches the bag, thud, Nightwing lands behind him on a dumpster or something raised. We'll talk about his suit design in a minute. He makes some witty remark and goes to kick the guy. But the guy steps back, pulls out a gun. Nightwing's eyes widen. Then, Dick Grayson is returning to the circus. When he sees police packed everywhere, he runs ahead to see what's happened. And there, in the center of the main tent, and now are the now bagged bodies of his parents. Dick begins to speak over an internal voice, like the little yellow boxes you normally get in the top left panel, the panels in comic books, as we start to see a bunch of stuff happening. he says some gangsters shot them. Apparently the circus hadn't paid up on protection money. The police promised to help. They didn't do anything. With nowhere to go, I was officially all alone, an orphan of Gotham, which meant I had to go where all the people who fall out of Gotham go. We see an orphanage. Dick stood in front of it, as he says one last line, Bloodhaven. I was going to talk about how it would be interesting to see a Dick Grayson who wasn't a kid when he became Robin, or a Dick Grayson who was never in the circus, but really I don't think that's the play to go with. In the end, I thought the real change should be Batman adopting and training him. Dick Grayson is often referred to as Batman's greatest success, but I think that's a little insulting to Nightwing, because Batman didn't create that. Dick made it. It was his choices and him leaving that created Nightwing. I think it's just interesting to see a Nightwing who is entirely self-taught and self-trained, a Nightwing who isn't adopted by Batman, but instead is inspired by him. To see what Dick does when everything is left to him and him alone. So, we see him getting into fights with other kids. We see him rejected from foster home to foster home. And Dick talks about how it was always hard for him. Then he receives a parcel back at the orphanage. The circus shut down due to the Graysons being gone, and so they've sent Dick all the possessions of the Graysons they still had. He goes through the box. There's a family photo that he never got to take. A set of hooked sticks that attach to the rope lines they used to use. And beneath it all is his old suit, the one he left in that changing room. The bright blue piercing through at him. At first, Dick doesn't really do much with it, but then he goes into the sort of shared room of the orphanage with all the other kids, and on the TV there's a news report. All the kids are talking about how some so-called vigilante in Gotham is so cool, and how they could totally fight alongside him. You know, like normal teenage stupidity. But Dick locks in on the screen. The report talks about how a series of gang lords in the south side of Gotham have been mysteriously taken out by some supposedly bat-themed vigilante. These criminals were apparently distributing drugs and weapons across the city while shaking down local businesses for protection money. So this would be when we'd see Dick working on his suit, right? Now inspired by Batman to stand up and do something, our hero needs a uniform. And I'm not really thinking we lean into the grit. Now, I know the Absolute Universe is darker and more more serious. And that's great, but Dick Grayson is the light within the dark. I mean, that's always what he was, right? When he was Robin, he brought Batman from the darker era, or not even era, but the darker side, into the more lighter side. And on his own, he goes to Bloodhaven, and he is that sort of whimsical, smiling hero. And I think his suit should represent that, right? So I'm thinking we lean more into his 90s suit. Yeah, I'm talking blue jumpsuit with golden accents. Now, I've seen a bunch of redesigns of this throughout the years, and they're all cool. But I'm thinking this Nightwing is all about showmanship. He's all about that style. So I want him to have a popped collar. And something on his underarms. Not the tassels, necessarily, that we've seen him wear in the past. But I'm saying something more like what Spider-Man's web wings are like, right? Even maybe when he's making it, he listens back to what his dad said about him being able to fly. This Grayson can't fly, but I like the idea that he still has the little wings. Or even, I don't know about a cape, but definitely the wing type things. But then, we get to the main piece that I think makes this Dick Grayson a little different. Looking back at the Flying Graysons, he modifies the hooks. This Nightwing uses a mixture of a grapnel gun and the Screamer sticks to fire his own trapeze lines. The wires run through the sticks into a small spike, and he launches the spike to attach to surfaces and then swings. Now, I know this might sound a bit like out there and unrealistic, and a lot of people have been looking at the Absolute Universe similarly to how people look at the Ultimate Universe in Marvel, where it's a bit more realistic. But honestly, I don't think that's what the Absolute Universe is. I'm sorry, I know this Batman is got a quote-unquote more realistic, more effective suit. Mate, it's crazy. Have you seen the suit? It has extendable spikes, batarang ears that seamlessly attach and detach, and a battle axe in the chest. No average guy has that. And that's perfectly fine, because superhero comics shouldn't be overly realistic. That's not what they are. Give us these more fun, more extreme takes on these characters. And so I think that it's reasonable to say this Nightwing has these special swim sticks. But when he's in combat, they act less like a web-swinging type trapeze rope, and they act more like one of those sort of electric lasso toys. I'll have one on screen, but if you know, then you know. And, like, he'd use it in unique ways. So he'd hook it under people's ankles, flipping them, or around their necks to pull them closer. And then I'd have him do flips and flashy moves constantly. This is a Nightwing who, despite not being driven in the right direction and being built by Batman, and despite not being trained to fight, he's doing his best and using everything he learned from the circus here. He isn't a man who was trained in all these different martial arts. He's a man who was taught how to flip, how to throw himself, and how to do tricks, how to use sleight of hand, and how to perform. As for how issue 1 rounds itself off, after he builds the suit and the swimmer sticks, it will cut back to now, one last time. The gun pulled on Nightwing, his eyes widen, then they go stern. As the trigger is pulled, Nightwing leaps in the air and performs the iconic Flying Grayson's triple backflip.
Hey, Oz. You remember the Flying Graysons?
Flying who? What are you on about?
Flying Graysons. The greatest acrobats in the world.
Shut up, you fairy.
Whenever they performed in that circus, there was magic in the air.
I said shut it!
There was one move they did just took your breath away.
You're about to suck down your last breath, boy. I'd make sure you say your goodbyes.
But as he lands, he uses the Screamer lasso to wrap around the gun, pulling from the man's hand, simultaneously launching himself forward, and lands a right hook on the gunman's face. So, as the story progresses, we will see this Nightwing getting personally involved with local affairs, taking on most likely Blockbuster's gang, and Blockbuster will then call in a mercenary to take down the Nightwing, Ravager. The overall story would have Nightwing accidentally cause Ravager's death, and then take on Blockbuster, defeating him and freeing the neighborhood from the gang's tyranny. Of course, this would be setting up a sequel storyline in the form of Deathstroke coming for revenge, and Nightwing having to move on from the fact that he holds himself responsible for Ravager's death. This whole concept was a bunch of fun, and if you guys have any absolute hero ideas, let me know. I might do more of these. It depends on how much DC end up covering themselves. Whilst these aren't predictions, I still don't want to constantly have my pitches end up being miles away from what happens, you know? I have been progressing very slowly on a much larger project for a video. That's why this one took so long to come out. One that won't be finished anytime soon, by the way. But I have more fun plans for videos of this sort of scale, and they definitely will take priority over the bigger project. So I'll be making my next video a lot quicker than I made this one. Do apologize on that. But either way, thank you all for watching and listening, and I'll see you in the next video.